Do kitchen gadgets really help you? Do they make things easier? Do you feel like they save you time? Or are they just a crutch that keeps you from learning? So where do you stand on this issue? Can a closet full of gadgets take the place of a brain filled with skills? We'll talk about it today on the Carefree Cook's Code. I'm Chef Todd Moore, and this is the Carefree Cook's Code, every Tuesday live at noon Eastern. Here's our challenge. How can home cooks cook freely with creativity, confidence, and pride while ignoring recipes and still impressing themselves and others with what they cook? Well, the answer is found in becoming empowered with how cooking works, using dependable and repeatable methods of cooking that work for any ingredient, for any diet, and any desire, just like chefs do. And we'll know we've cracked it when everyone sees cooking as an exciting and rewarding way to improve their relationships, their lifestyles, and their health through better food and cooking. This is the Carefree Cook's Code. There you are. Hey, welcome back to the Carefree Cook's Code, everyone. I'm so glad we're back together again. This is the weekly show for the methods, techniques, and insights into better food and cooking. We're live every Tuesday at noon Eastern, and if you want to see past videos, go to the archive on Facebook, facebook.com/chef.todd.moore/videos, and you'll see also the schedule there. Anyone that's commenting, just get to cooking. We don't cook on Tuesdays. We cook on Thursdays. We discuss on Tuesdays. Why is this? Well, because we're carefree cooks. We create our own recipes. We bring friends and family together. We learn every time we cook. We create our own cooking style because we practice the pro methods in cooking and we wind up loving what we do. So, hey, let me ask you a blunt question today, and I want you to think about your answer honestly. Are you enjoying your time in the kitchen more or less lately? More or less? Is it, it seems to me that people are spending a lot more time in their kitchens lately, but I want to know if you're actually enjoying it in any way or not, because people are being drawn back into their home kitchens. They have to. The difference here is, do you dig it or don't? When you find yourself cooking more meals at home, does it seem like fun or does it seem like a huge chore? Because my goal is to make cooking not only less stressful for people, but actually enjoyable. Again, part of the creed is we enjoy our cooking. We love what we do, right? Because when you discover the hows and whys behind cooking, when you focus on heat and not a clock or written instructions, you gain confidence. And with confidence in repeatable methods of cooking comes that creativity to explore. And then you have this wide variety of original dishes that you just whip up. And that's when cooking becomes fun. That's the point I want to get you to enjoy it. And it helps your health, your wealth, relationships, all of the important things if you love it, if you really enjoy it. But first, before we get more deeply into that, I've got a what am I for you today. The top one is old school. The bottom one is new school. They both do the same thing. What do these two things do? We should handicap it if you're on the eastern shore of Maryland or where I am. Nonetheless, hey, look, I'm not here to take your gadgets from you, okay? I'm not going to bash gadgets today. I'm not coming for your crock pots. I think you have a constitutional right to bear crock pots if you like. That's what the forefathers said. You can bear sous vide stick. Now, all right, well, I'm not a constitutional scholar. That's obvious. And I'm not here to start a food fight today. I'm here to encourage thought, okay? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. You're not doing it wrong. You're not doing it right. You don't have to do what I do, okay? There's no judgments here. It's only what's right for you and maybe some new stuff to think about this week. So first, we're not talking about cooking today. As I've always said, a skilled cook should be able to cook on a hot rock. Actually, a mentor chef said that to me, and I've repeated it 1,000 times. So no matter what the heat source that you like, It's all okay with me. At least you're cooking. But when you're preparing your food for cooking, there are really only 4 procedures that you ever need to accomplish something. Okay, so we're not talking about the flame. We're not talking about pots and pans and stuff like that. We're talking about getting to that point. And the 4 procedures that you need to accomplish are cutting, grating or pureeing very often, mixing or grinding. Right? These are the things that happen in prep before you get to the flame. And you have a choice at this stage in your cooking. You can go old school or you can go new school. So let's play with this a little bit, okay? You'll see where I'm going with this. Stay with me because there's always a big point at the end. So let's talk about cutting. Cutting tools. If you're in the old school, there are really only 4 knives that you ever need. A chef's knife, a boning knife, a paring knife, and a serrated slicing knife. Now, I know some people are passing out that have 40 knives in their drawers. That's great. If you like to collect them, fine. But you only need 4 if you're old school. But if you go to the new school, the nice, bright, shiny school, you might think about other things for cutting. Maybe a mandolin is good for you for thin slices of things, although mandolins are scary. Maybe you have a food processor with a slicer attachment or the ability to grind things and puree things. Maybe you like your electric carving knife around the holidays, right? Everybody thinks that their chopper dicer device is safer, faster, and quicker than a knife. Okay, and I've seen these chopper dicer devices on TV, late night TV all the time. I've seen it dozens of times. That people like to lean on the gadgetry because it makes things so much easier. And many years ago, I had a neighbor who considered herself a very good cook, and she was a very good home cook. Taught by her mom, she told me, kind of passed along because her mom was a good cook. And at the time, we were all building new houses. We had a relatively close-knit neighborhood. There were a lot of community barbecues, garage parties, Thanksgiving dinner, holiday parties going on all throughout the year. And all of us, new couples, building new houses, there was always great food in the neighborhood because every house was a new construction. We brought younger couples to a area that's just starting their families. And man, when we were young, we had some parties until the kids started to arrive. And once the kids arrived, all things kind of changed, but it has nothing to do with cooking. I was always impressed with Judy's cooking because when she brought things to the potluck, when she invited us to Christmas dinner, holiday dinner, when she cooked for the neighborhood, I mean, this woman is an entertaining dynamo. And one of the reasons that I appreciated her so much is because she introduced me to inflatable monkeys that I befriended maybe after a beer or two. The reason that I appreciated her so much is nobody wants to have a chef over to their house. It's really one of the downsides of what I do. And people always say, oh, I would never invite a chef to dinner. And they always ask me, are you critical of restaurants? Or they tell me they'd never want to cook for me because I would always tell them what was wrong with what they were cooking. I really hate that. I mean, I really hate that, first of all, because I'm probably missing out on some really good meals. And second of all, it's just not true. I mean, I'm thrilled when anybody cooks for me. I'm not a critical, snotty chef. I'm appreciative. I think it's impressive to cook for an entire neighborhood of people or invite neighbors over for a multi-course holiday dinner. And I mean, at this point, after somebody goes through all that effort, you'd be a real jerk to criticize their cooking, chef or not, right? So I digress. The point I'm getting to is about chopper dicer devices. We had an occasion to cook together on a block party for some 4th of July celebration we were doing. It was going to be a big event with the street blocked off by the local police, people wheeling their grills and their smokers to the front of their house. Coolers of beer were packed, the games set up for the kids. And of course, there's a lot of food prep to do for this big party. And Judy had volunteered to do most of it. And of course, I couldn't let her volunteer for all that work while a professional chef, a guy that currently owns a catering company, sits and watches. Now, I did donate all the tables. I donated all the chairs, all the tablecloths, all the silverware, all the chafing dishes, all the servicewares, the paper plates, the garbage bag. But who's counting? I could have sat with my feet up at that point, but if Judy's going into the kitchen, I'm going into the kitchen too, right? And as I entered her kitchen, I noticed she had her nose in a recipe book and her finger kind of going over it line by line. I thought to myself, does she read Braille? It's just with the finger. But anyway, she went to the pantry. She brought out an onion, returned to the cookbook, and started tracing lines in the cookbook again. And I said to her, Judy, I'll cut that onion for you. I've cut a few onions in my day, No, I got it. I've got a certain way to do it. And, I know I love her, but I know she has a certain way to do most things. So I watched Judy go to her cabinet, reach up to the top shelf, and bring down her onion chopper dicer device. She placed the device on the counter. She placed the chopping bowl on the motor shaft, but it didn't really fit at first. So she had to play with the bowl a little bit, and it finally clicked into the safety clicks and so on. And then she took the blade and she put the blade on the motor shaft, but that too has a certain way to go on. So you got to play with it a little bit. And then she struggled with it a little bit, and that finally went in place also. Well, then she has to get out her cutting board to cut the onion in half and peel the skin off the onion anyway, and then cut it into 4 pieces that would fit inside the chopper dicer cabinet. So she took the 2 pieces, half the onion, she put it into the machine. Then the lid, you got to play with the lid a little bit. That doesn't really quite fit. Then the lid finally clicked, and then she puts it back in place. She plugs it in, and then she hits the button on the chopper dicer device. You got to look at it. Is that enough? And she put chopper dicer device. Then you got to take the lid off. You put the lid, you take the blade off, and you got to put the blade in the sink. Then you take the bowl off. You got to turn the bowl upside down, and you got to knock all the bits of onion out. She transfers the zapped onion to another bowl, and then starts the whole procedure of putting the chopper dicer back together again to cut the other half of the onion. Fidgeting with the bowl, messing with the blade, putting in the second half of the onion. Lid doesn't really fit again. With a zapped, and then she's got zapped onion. Turn out the onion onto a bowl, take it over to the chop, wash the bowl, wash the blade, wash the lid, unplug it, whop it up, put it back up in the cabinet on the top shelf. I was exhausted watching her. I mean, forget about the onion. There's a way to do this easier. The amount of time that she spent assembling, disassembling, washing that gadget was incredible. That chopper dicer device of hers was costing her time in the kitchen. I wanted to introduce her to the very first thing that we teach in culinary school. It's called chef's knife. Well, Judy was making a salsa. Tomatoes and onions and so on. But at the end, I noticed the pieces of onion were all different sizes. Really, the onion had been pureed. It hadn't been neatly diced. And in culinary school, we have a mantra. Might have heard me say it. Consistency of cut is consistency of cook. And consistency of cut is consistency of look. Now, look, I'm not criticizing Judy. I loved working with her. But it's that chopper dicer device that messed up the whole dish. It made like watery onion puree. Everything else about it was just about perfect. Even the recipe was pretty good. But look, it just needed some knife skills, right? It needed some old school, not some new school. It just needed a small focus on how the ingredients were prepared. Now, I could have had that onion diced pretty much before she got the chopper dicer device plugged into the wall. And my knife wipes clean with pretty much one stroke. But it's a good example about how gadgets can actually cost you time in the kitchen. So let's get back to it. The next thing you might have to do is grating or pureeing, even when you're not trying to puree the onion. So if you're old school, you might have a food mill. Maybe your mom or grandma had a food mill that squished the food through small little openings. Maybe you have a box grater instead of an electric grater where you rub the cheese on. I've got a bunch of those. Maybe you have an old-timey potato masher instead of putting it in your Cuisinart. But if you're new school, who wants to mess with those hand tools? You probably got yourself a food processor. Maybe you do have an onion chopper dicer device or a Ninja or a Vitamix or an immersion blender. That's a way to get that done. New school versus old school. No right, no wrong, no judgments. I just want to know which side you're on, because then we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes and what that means about you and what that means about your cooking. What if you're baking and you're old school? You're old school baking, you got a whisk. right? You got a hand blender, an egg beater, one of those old, where you turn it and it looks like an old Mary Poppins device or something. But if you're new school, the heck with cranking old egg beaters, you got yourself a KitchenAid mixer, right? Or maybe you have one of those electric hand blenders like mom did to get your cake going. Old school, new school. Are you keeping score? Which side are you on? Let's talk about grinding. If you're old school, you love your mortar and pestle. Do you not love grinding up peppercorns and whole spices and so on in your mortar and pestle? If you think that's too much work, just get yourself a coffee grinder, an electric coffee grinder. So there's the realm of basic tools you need. How many do you have in your house that are old school? How many do you have that are new school? How many do you depend upon elbow grease? We used to say, how much on electricity? Because you can make your own choices in preparing your food, whether you're old school or new school. All you got to do is decide if the time you save is worth the money that you spend. To me, it's that easy. Some people love to fill their cabinets with gadgets, but they don't save money, certainly. Buying a gadget versus not. They may not even save you time or effort. And to me, it really turns out to be that simple. So let me warn you about needing a specific gadget or tool to accomplish a task. I always say a tool is something that helps you cook. A gadget is something that does the cooking for you. But if you need a specific tool to get something done, let me ask you this. What if you were without the tool one day? What if you couldn't find it? What if you couldn't find your favorite vegetable peeler? Could you still peel a vegetable with a paring knife? Like, what if you didn't have a calculator? Could you still do long addition? What if you didn't have a shrimp deveiner? What if you didn't have your apple corer? What if you didn't have your citrus sectioner? Could you still do the job with one of the 4 basic knives? Tell you another story. Many years ago, I used to teach swimming to children. There I am, mid-80s, I would say, early 80s. And the kids would show up to class with nose plugs on or inflatable wings that would hold them up. These are crutches. These are things that get in the way of the instructor. And when I was a, 17-year-old kid teaching cooking, I already knew I had the instructor kind of thing in me. But getting like a 6-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid to give up their nose plugs is insane. I tried to force them to take their nose plugs off. I tried to ask the parents, can you please not send them with nose plugs? It's hurting the whole issue. But it never happened. They were not going to part with their gadgets, with their breathing gadget. And I started to realize that it was really a security issue. It was really a sense of security. The nose plugs didn't really, it's frightening, huh? That's a lot of what I saw. The nose plugs did not help the kids swim. It's just nobody can argue that nose plugs help swimming, but they felt like it was helping them. And the brain loves security, especially a kid. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you comfortable at all times. And there was no way I was going to ban or forbid nose plugs because it would have made the kids even more nervous about learning to swim. So I came up with a new strategy, and maybe one that you can borrow about your cooking gadgets. It's the same strategy that I'm going to use on you in just a few minutes, because I'll tell you what I did to those kids. No, that didn't sound good. I'll tell you what I did that eventually affected those kids, how I got them to willingly throw away their nose plugs. Everybody took them and tossed them out willingly, excitedly to do so. So let me ask you something. Would you rather be able to swim with or without nose plugs? When it comes to the actual cooking, when it comes time to apply the heat to food, this is where everybody falls into one of 2 categories: nose plugs or no nose plugs, convenience or curiosity. It got a little more interesting now, right? So think about your score from before, whatever you rolled up in your head. How many times did you say, yeah, I'm old school, or yeah, I'm new school? It's convenience or curiosity. And one of our carefree cooks of longest standing, big help to me, tremendous value and asset to our community is Don. Everybody knows Don. And this is what Don posted recently about being generous with his time to help guide other carefree cooks. And this is what it was. It was a gadgets versus tools discussion in our Carefree Cooks community. And this is how Don put it. Don says one group focuses on the end result as the accomplishment, and they want to get there as easily, as fast and as possible. Okay? This is convenience. It's the end result that's most important. That's the accomplishment in itself, just getting it done. But the other group focuses on the cooking itself. And while the results may be the end goal, their true joy is the journey in getting there. So is it convenience or curiosity for you? Is it destination or journey for you? If you're on the nose plugs side of things, well, then I understand why you have a crock pot. I know why you got a sous vide stick, an Instacooker, or cookware that's supposed to do the work for you. It's okay, I'm not judging. There are no judgments here. You're probably pressed for time. You probably got a busy schedule. You have a lot of responsibilities, other things that consume your time, and cooking seems like a little bit more bothersome chore that takes up the time that you don't have. I get it. I understand that. And I appreciate you for at least cooking your own food at home. Okay? Don't do the takeout or microwavable thing. Wholesome food from your grocery store, even if you do use a gadget to cook it, is better than not cooking at all. But you're still on team nose plugs. Sorry. But on the other hand, if you don't need nose plugs to swim, if you love being in the water, if you love how it feels, if you enjoy the journey involved in learning, and this is what separates a lot of people, the journey involved in learning. So when I taught swimming and half the class would show up with the nose plugs, one of the first lessons I decided to do was getting those little children to blow bubbles out of their noses with their heads in the water. Look down, blow bubbles. If the air is coming out, the water can't get in, I told them. Enjoy the sensation of blowing bubbles. Feel the bubbles streaming past your ears, across your cheeks. Watch each other. Watch him blow bubbles. They'd laugh. They'd point at each other. And the nose plug kids sitting on the side of the pool, seeing how much fun they were missing out on with their noses all plugged up, that they tossed those nostril crutches right away because everybody else was having so much fun blowing bubbles from their noses. They were having fun with it. It was a terrible snotty mess that day, but it was a great lesson. Because if you want to blow bubbles from your nose, if you love the process of cooking, if you're curious about the journey, about gaining skills with each meal you cook, well, that is the path to becoming a carefree cook. And those are the people that cherish their saute pan because it's a vessel to create with. Those are the people that love their knives, just a few pans. They love their spice rack. They enjoy setting a pretty table. All this stuff is like blowing bubbles from your nose. It feels good. It streams past your ears, but it's not snotty. If you're a curious cook, you enjoy the process. You learn every time you cook. You have this great sense of accomplishment and pride when you nail it, you know? And you love your cooking. And you don't need nose plugs to do it. You don't need false security to do it, because those gadgets, they may not even be helping you. They're just clogging up your nose and preventing you from breathing. Here's the what am I for today. The answer to the what am I: top old school, bottom new school. On the top is a crab mallet. On the bottom is the new school crab crusher. My mom is constantly trying to get me to take that crab crusher. I won't do it. It is old school. I don't use the mallet either, but nonetheless. The crab crusher, you put half the crab under that pendulum there, and then you kind of roll it forward, and it's supposed to squish all the meat out. It's a gadget. It does it for you. I like picking the crabs. Hey, look, if you know someone who'd benefit from moving their focus from gadgets to skills, please love, share this video with them so everyone can enjoy their time in the kitchen even more this year. And speaking of time outside the kitchen, let's talk about some outdoor cooking now. Whether you're on charcoal or wood because you're old school, or you got a gas or pellet grill because you're new school, I bet you're making at least one of the top 3 mistakes that most backyard cooks make. And the reason I know this is because I was making all 3 of them just a few months ago. And if you want to hear the story about how I totally forgot how to cook outdoors because I hadn't done it in 9 years, and then what I did to reteach myself, well, you should definitely hold a seat in this week's free online class. It's called How to Fix the Top 3 Grilling Mistakes for More Obedient Outdoor Cooking. Go to webcookingclasses.com/obedient to check for available class time. So until next Tuesday, when we take even more steps toward cracking this Carefree Cooks Code, this is Chef Todd Moore reminding you that there's a method to your cooking success. Bye, everyone.